It's just great to have you here. Thank you for joining us. If you've joined us since we started, we're all here from Crediton Congregational Church, and hopefully you've noticed celebrating Easter. Hopefully that's become clear. Do you know this story, or maybe it's a poem called Footprints? It's very famous. It just gets around everywhere. It's a story of a man who has a dream, and in his dream, he sees all of his life that's happened come before his eyes. And the different parts of his life are represented by these footprints in the sand. And as he looks at them, he realizes that there are two sets of footprints. And then he realizes it's not just him walking through his life, but God is walking through his life with him. But then he looks closer and he sees that some of the most traumatic times in his life, the times when he's reached suffering or difficulty, actually there is only one set of footprints. And he thinks to himself, it must be those were the times when God left me. Do you know this story? We'll come back to it in a minute. There's two instances, we heard one of them in the Easter story, which I find absolutely fascinating and I think might help us today. One of them is Mary, who she thinks the gardener, but then after a moment realizes she's actually seeing Jesus. She's there in her sadness, maybe there's tears in her eyes. She sees this figure and says, do you know where they've put my Lord? And he says her name, Mary. And then suddenly she realizes she's seeing the risen Jesus. So first of all, she sees Jesus, but she didn't realize it was Jesus straight away. There's another very similar story from later in the same day. Two disciples, two of Jesus' special friends, are leaving Jerusalem. They're walking away from the city. And a stranger comes alongside them and walks with them and talks with them. And there's this wonderful conversation where they're processing all that's happened to them in the last few years, all they've seen Jesus do, but the great disappointment of his death on Good Friday. And this stranger listens to them and helps them process all this stuff. And then they invite him in when they get to the house they're going to, and they have dinner with him. And as they're having dinner, suddenly their eyes are opened. And they realize it's not a stranger on the road, but it's Jesus. It's the risen Jesus. In the same way, they saw him, but at first they didn't see him. Mary saw him, but at first she didn't see him. And then these two disciples, they saw him, but at first they hadn't seen him. And it makes me wonder if perhaps this Easter story is more subtle than we realise. We're making a great big song and dance of it today, because if there's one thing our church does well, it's making songs and dances of things. But maybe the story of Easter is more subtle than that. Maybe it's a bit of a slow burn. Maybe it's a gradual realisation, as well as a great big eureka. That's how I came to faith. I don't know about any of you. Maybe some of you it was a voice out of the sky, a bolt out of the blue, but for me it was a gradual dawning. Some things happening in my life and then me thinking, oh, maybe that's not a bunch of coincidences, maybe that's God. Or I was experiencing sometimes this deep peace, but maybe it wasn't just deep peace, maybe I was experiencing the love of God. It was like over time, this picture was beginning to form. I was just gradually having this dawning realization that God was with me. I was seeing him, but at first I wasn't seeing him. I wonder if it's the same for any of us today. Maybe you're having glimpses of God and his goodness. A picture is just beginning to form. You wouldn't say yet that you see him, but maybe you're beginning to see him. I often meet with people who say to me, oh, I wish I had faith like you Christians. I'm envious of it. I'd love to have that faith like that. And I think maybe people are waiting for this great big eureka moment, a voice from the sky or a bolt from the blue, something like that. And, you know, that might happen. But maybe what's also going on is it's almost like you put on new glasses. You know, when you've been to Specsavers and you put them on and then it's not like an overnight change, but just everything's a little bit clearer. Maybe it's a bit like that. We're looking at God. God is at work in our lives, but we don't yet see it clearly, but we're beginning to see it. Like Mary, who was looking at Jesus, but didn't realize who she was looking at yet. Like those disciples who were talking with him, but didn't realize it was him. And maybe it's the same for us, that God is coming alongside us in our sadness, like Mary's sadness, coming alongside us to help us process what's happened, like with those disciples. Maybe he's alongside us, inviting us into his joy. Maybe he's waiting for us to realize that it's him. Maybe he wants to help us in our lives. Maybe he wants to walk beside us. Perhaps joy is awaiting us if we could just glimpse it through our tears. Maybe God is leading us to open our hearts. That was my experience. I felt like I needed something more to aspire for in my life, and on reflection it was God calling me to give my heart and my life to him. This week is the whole week of Easter. We think about the Easter weekend, but actually the next 8 days are all the week of Easter. I'd like to invite you to take a moment each day this week to consider, what are you seeing? And could it be that you're seeing God, but you just haven't realized it yet? And so we've got something to give you, which is it's a little card with a magnet on the back. The idea is you could stick it on your fridge. But if you find somewhere more creative that it will stick to, send me a photo. I'd love to see where it ends up. There's 5 questions here. Maybe to ask yourself each day in this week of Easter. What am I thankful for today? How have I invited... See, you know that thing I said about the glasses? I really know about glasses now. How? Can you hold this for me? I know she can't. No, she with the. Oh, great! Thank you, Mark. Oh, I could see it, but now I can really see it. How have I been invited to grow? Where have I found or given comfort? Did I glimpse God in any of these things? And what do I want to say to God today? Would you like to join me in considering those questions each day this week? In a moment, some people are going to come and bring you these. We'd love you to take them away and find somewhere good to stick them. It might just be on your fridge. Oh, look! They stick on a music stand. That's wonderful. Could it be that God is right in front of us, but we're just gradually beginning to see him? Could it be that he's already walking with us? We're just gradually beginning to notice. I'll take you back to the footprint story. So the man looked at his life, all these episodes of his life. I don't need this anymore, thank you. And thought that there was only one set of footprints whenever his life got difficult. And he said to God, where were you in all those struggles? And God said to him, oh, that's when I picked you up and carried you. There's only one set of footprints because you needed carrying through those times, and I carried you. Maybe God is with us and we're looking at it, but we're only just beginning to see it, just like happened with that man. We don't see it yet, but we might begin to see it more clearly this week. Great. So 2 things are going to happen now.